regulations are top of mind for folks, whether it is you already have been reporting on voluntary standards and are about to face IFRS S1 or S2, or whether you already have been preparing for that for many months. We wanted to kick off today with a fireside chat with Roberta. Thank you so much for joining me, and please flag it if there's things that this is your opportunity to during this session, but also Roberta, I think you'll be sticking around. So one of the advantages of having an early session is that people know who you are. So they will be able to come find you. But as a very brief intro from my side to Roberta, why we're so excited is because she's part of the technical staff at the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, that are in charge of delivering the frameworks such as IFRS S1, S2. And really with that drive implementation of standardization and industry adoption of this framework. Before that, spent her time also being part of the technical staff at the International Accounting Standards Boards, working on the accounting standards from IFRS that we're all quite familiar with, and coordinating with that the relationships that the IFRS as a body has with each of the national standard setters. Before that as well, worked of course also in practice at PwC in Italy. So I have seen also the side of large corporations, filers of those standards. So you've seen both sides of the standard setting as well as how does it then hit practice. Now what the goal of today is to go into specifically IFRS S1 S2 in light of also the UK sustainability reporting standards that will be rolling out in 2026. And maybe Roberta, I think anything that the folks in the room should know before we dive into the content that I may have missed in the intro.
Thank you very much for the invitation to join the summit and also for the program that you have put together. I think we are really interested also to talk to companies, investors, to people that really implement the standard that we develop. And your introduction was absolutely perfect about my background. The only thing that I would add is that when I was in the practice and I was working as an auditor, I observed how companies move to IFRS accounting standards. So the benefit of moving from local standards in different jurisdictions. At the time I was working in Italy, and then I worked a bit in France. So I could see how the European Union adoption of IFRS accounting standard had improved comparability of accounting standard and information provided at that time. And I think the same is happening now with sustainability reporting. So the objective is to create something similar that is globally comparable.
No, and I like that as a framing. So this movie has played before. We have done this in the financial standards. So basically, the question to kick us off today is how should organizations indeed think about, on the one end, the development of such global frameworks like IFRS S1 S2, but also keep in mind their local regulatory expectations that if you're a multinational company, could even be several jurisdictions to think about, right? Like what are some thoughts that you have for folks thinking about that?
Well, I would say the regulatory environment is very active. So we have published IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 in June 2023. And after a couple of years of those standards being available for use on a voluntary basis or for introduction to regulatory framework, we have seen that there are about 40 jurisdictions that are in the process of adopting the standards or developing local equivalent of the standard, incorporating most of the contents, and that's a big size of the jurisdiction in the world. They represent, I think, about 60% of the GDP, 40% of the market capitalization for listed companies. So what we see is that the standard that we made available are really integrated into the regulatory framework. And the positive, I would say, things is that the foundation of the standards are similar to foundations that are already in practice. So like the foundation, or we try when developing the standards to really consider what was already available in the market rather than reinvent the wheel. But of course, introducing some improvements so that the standard can provide more comparable and a better quality information about risk and opportunity.
Yeah, so that is just to rephrase those statistics. So that's 60% of the global GDP is covered by ISSB. That's quite the territory. And what we've also find, and obviously for many folks in the room, the CSRD omnibus world is probably very top of mind, very much a 2025 trending topic. One of the things that now the European Commission has specifically asked EFRAG, right, is to, in their revisiting of those initial 1,200 plus standards, to really focus on interoperability with the ISSB standards. And through that, we also see that convergence between the EU and the ISSB. So I'd love to understand a bit more about that consolidation approach at the ISSB, because you already mentioned TCFD, and already we should have handed out bingo cards before this session, but tell us a bit more about that consolidating approach that ISSB is taking.
Yes, I think that's crucial also for the interoperability aspect that you mentioned regarding what the CSRD require and the European sustainability reporting standard. I would say compared to IFRS S1 and IFRS S2. When the ISSB was established, the objective was really to create a global initiative that could reduce the fragmentation in the different initiative in sustainability reported. So the standards incorporate the TCFD recommendations, and this means that the company that already use the TCFD recommendation can apply IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 and provide information that are also recommended by the TCFD. And the TCFD disbanded in October 2023. And the reason for the disbandment after 6 years of very active, I would say, work is because the standard themselves already incorporate everything that was the objective of TCFD. So the Financial Stability Board decided that the TCFD had completed the work, and then the monitoring of reporting regarding the climate-related disclosure was then something that the IFRS Foundation could do. And the TCFD recommendation has been the foundation for the IFRS S1 and IFRS S2, but also the European standard, the CSRD, even the US SEC climate rule that never came into effect was building on the TCFD. So I think that these common foundations help in achieving the interoperability between standards, particularly with IFRS at the moment said. Is not topic, I would say, in September, given the consultation is open. I know, you've shown the program earlier for the summit, and we will have people from the IFRAG staff as well.
Exactly. So maybe on that, because I know some folks in the room, like we're based in the UK, obviously, and in 2022 it was the Treasury came out to say UK really wants to, as a jurisdiction, set the gold standard for the credible plans around net zero planning. We have seen a lot of uptake on net zero targets, but then how are we actually also as a country, as an economy, able to feel that organizations are able to make a credible link between that target setting and the actual roadmap of getting there? So this brings me to the work you also have been driving on transition planning. This is part of IFRS S1 S2, but this also by itself is separate. So the IFRS actually currently has come out with a guidance document that is open for consultation until September 17th. So you still have an opportunity this week. But can you tell me a bit more about the transition plans, and particularly as we are comparing CSRD, which also has that as a focal point? How can I think about those two differently? Can I use the same plan for my IFRS S1 S2 and my CSRD, or would I have to?
I think the example of the transition plans and the work of the UK transition plan task force is another very good example of the consolidation of initiatives to reduce the fragmentation of resources available for the sustainability related information. Last year, we announced taking over the responsibility for the disclosure-specific material that was developed by the Transition Plan Task Force in the UK, following the initiative that you mentioned, with that objective to make life easier for a company. Transition plan, climate transition plan is a topic that has already seen disclosures because, of course, there are jurisdiction or regulation that require that a transition plan to be in place. What the IFRS standards require is to disclose information if you have a transition plan in place. So the role is really to provide a set of disclosure requirements that enable companies to disclose information, then investor compare the different information about the climate-related transition. And with the link to CSRD, in terms of climate-related requirement, there is a high degree of alignment between IFRS S2 and the European standards, so the IFRS, including on the topic of transition plans. Last year, both, IFRS and IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 were issued more or less at the same time, June 2023 and July 2023. And we had, I think, the benefit of working very closely with the IFRS staff, so the IFRS Foundation staff and the IFRS staff together to align.
I do wonder, do you guys meet up? Is there a community? Is there a WhatsApp?
Our daily job, I think. So many trips to Brussels, many trips to London for IFRS, and a lot of Teams calls these days. So at that time, we really tried to work together to work for an efficient reporting. I think, of course, the IFRS Foundation have different mandates, but the intention is really to make life easier to companies that choose or are required to comply with both set of standards. So following all that intense work of align as much as possible, we issue jointly, both together the IFRS Foundation and IFRAG, and ESRS ISSP standard interoperability guidance that really map the different requirements in the various requirements in IFRS S2 and in ESRS to explain what is the correspondence between the two and see where there are the similarities, and you will see that there is a long list of similarities, and when are the areas of attention. So if a company starts with SRS or start with IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 and also want to comply with the other set of standards, which are the areas you need to pay attention on. And I would say on transition plans, probably ESRS are more detailed in asking which are the key points to disclose, while IFRS S2 mainly point on the need to disclose assumptions used in developing the plan and dependencies on which the plan relies. So based on, the ESRS that were issued in 2020, these are the area of attention. And of course, the simplification process placed in Europe as part of the Omnibus package consider possible further alignment, whether it is possible to do even better. And the consultation on simplified ESRS is open. It's true that we issue a guidance document for transition plan disclosure in June this year, really to help companies approaching the implementation of IFRS S2 to understand better the specific topic of transition plans. And you mentioned the UK. The UK is also consulting on the need to acquire transition plans and the associated disclosure. So
lots of opportunity to chime in and share your thoughts on how that convergence is really going from a company perspective. And maybe from our side, I do very much appreciate all the guidance that indeed has been shared in terms of interoperability. It's been very much the foundation for how we as a software platform work on the backbone of the reporting software for this, because in the end it all has to come together, and we wouldn't want our users to duplicate entries. So segueing over into opening up the room, I think we've learned. We got an opening in terms of the standards. Roberta, as you mentioned, can speak to many things, and I can kick us off with a first question I've heard in the customer conversations we've had, but then would very much be keen to, if you already have your question ready, raise your hand so that we can know where to find you with our microphone. But one of the things that we've had many conversations on is a key role in both IFRS and CSRD is materiality, and a lot of that is the onus is on the organization, right, to really create a rationale and the explanation of how did you determine X, Y, and Z. Now, if I'm a multinational organization going through both frameworks, how can I think about materiality through those two lenses of CSRD and IFRS, and what's the convergence there between the two standards?
That be a good topic for a discussion. I mean, we spent a lot of time looking at these points specifically because what IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 ask is to disclose the material information about your risk and opportunities. So materiality, the concept of what is material for investors, what really makes the difference when it is disclosed and enable an investor to decide whether want to invest in your companies or how that compare with your peer is a crucial filter to identify what to disclose. And IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 have this approach of looking at what is financially material. So what has, I would say, an impact on or is relevant for a company prospect. And company prospect means cash flows, access to finance, cost of capital. So that type of focus. IFRS, the good news is that I have exactly the same approach in terms of financial materiality. So the approach to materiality, the definition of what represents material information is totally aligned with between IFRS and ISSB standards. So the outcome is expected to be the same. And this is another, I think, achievement of the collaboration with IFRS, because we really wanted to avoid that companies that need to report in compliance with CSRD and the associated European standard, and they need to report in compliance with IFRS S1 and IFRS S2, do the exercise twice, just to identify the type of information report. So this alignment on the financial materiality is really to improve report efficiency and for your system. I hope that you could see the benefit of mapping things that are aligned. The remit of the CSRD and the objective is wider than, broader, I would say, than the focus of IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 on financial materiality, because it covers the impact, risk and opportunity of what are, I think, defining IFRS as material matters. So it has this possibility to add to the financial materiality for the specific need of broader audience in addition to investors. So capturing something that
maybe one example we discussed in our prep session is so let's make it very concrete, right? What if you're operating in an area where water is scarce and you are actually in your processes using a lot of water? If that water still is very affordable and it's not a financial risk in the coming years, you could, under IFRS, you could arguably not report it as a factor. Whereas in that instance, if you are contributing to the depletion of the local water from a CSRD angle, you'd have to report on it because you are, with your operations, impacting the environment. Is that like an example where the company would not have mentioned it under IFRS S1 and S2, but would have included it under CSRD?
I think that's a good example, just to give a flavor of what it means, adding something that is material for the reporting under CSFD and might not be material for financial materiality perspective. So in addition to financial materiality perspective. But I think one important aspect is that it's not that IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 totally new impact, things that are only relevant because they have an impact on the environment. That's an example that you made about the water usage or water consumption. For example, if you are in the beverage business, probably the consumption of water is an important matter to disclose information on. And you mentioned, I think in your example, it might not be financial material because the water is available. It's not a material topic to I would say provide information on. But on the other hand, if, for example, your water consumption has an impact on the marine species, it has something that might pose a risk of affecting your license to operate in that sector because the water damage that you are making with your business on the water availability, that could have an impact on the company prospect. For example, if you're using your license to operate, it's likely to affect your cash flows. So that could be relevant to disclose in your sustainability report, even from a financial materiality perspective. So I would say it's not so easy to drive a line. It's not what. But my suggestion would be to focus on the substance. Sometimes we, spend a lot of time thinking about the different definition, the different terminology, but in practice, what you really want to report is information that is useful. And there might be different reasons. One, because you want to show the impact on the environment. In another case, the impact on your prospects, on your future. But at the end, the information that you report is the same for different reasons, but maybe I have to optimistic. But
no, I think sounds very logic, right? Focus on substance, and despite the many pages you can read on the standards, maintaining focus on what's truly substance for me. What do I want to communicate? It's a good focus point. Any thoughts or questions folks have, either on stage or, as I mentioned before, Roberta will be around during the day if you want to find her later.
One is that anybody that is going through the process of comparing IFRS and IFRS S1 and IFRS S2, or the UK consultation adoption of the standard in the UK.
Well, I have a question. So obviously there's been a lot of collaboration with other regulatory bodies, standard settings to align. If you'd have to sort of say, this is the thing where driving alignment has been the most difficult, or where there's actually still the biggest gap, what would that be from your perspective? And why does that gap remain? As in, sort of like, is that then maybe a fundamental disagreement about how this should be done? So we'd be keen to learn that.
West. I would say that the gap that remains are related to a different objective of the regulation. For example, when thinking about the work of IFRS and the European Union, that needs to be put in the context of policy objectives. That's an objective of European regulation. Green Deal is not the lack of exports or disagreement between the parties on the technical work. Everything that has been achieved in terms of alignment is because of the commonalities. Where things different is because of a different objective that go beyond the pure disclosure, the policy-oriented initiative. Very understandable in the context of jurisdictional relief is something similar that we observe around the world for jurisdiction that I mentioned are incorporating IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 in their regulated framework. So that's the common baseline to ensure that there is comparability and improve information around the world. But each jurisdiction might have its specific local circumstances, and that's what they need to be considered. And what is the benefit of having a common baseline is that it's possible to add on top of that using what we call the building block approach. So you start from the common base, and then if there is something specific in your local environment or regulation, you do that, but without affecting, I would say, the common base of comparability if you are using the same starting point.
So maybe on that, because that global baseline and then building blocks to add on top of that, but perhaps then on to wrap up the session, any words of encouragement for folks in the room that are maybe in the first year of their reporting because they're UK based, like.
My first, I would say, advice would be consider the opportunity of telling the story about your company, about how you manage risk and opportunities related to sustainability. Explain what is your strategy rather than treating the process as a compliance exercise. So the way the reporting standards, the disclosure standards are structured might be paragraph by paragraph covering different topics. IFRS might have a different architecture compared to IFRS S1 and IFRS S2, but the objective is not to follow the paragraph in sequence with a rigid structure and tick the box and say, I'm complying with this and that. I think my suggestion would be to think first about which are the risks and opportunities on which you would like to report information on, because are those relevant for communication. Structure the reporting in a way that enables to tell the story. So, for example, 50-page report, not 300 pages report. And that's, I think, one of the most complex things, thinking about the structure of your communication. Some companies might have already reported based on TCFD Foundation or other frameworks. So if you are in the first tier, probably the first step is to read and familiarize with the different resources available, and then conduct kind of a gap analysis, what you have already and what you aim to achieve with the compliance with the reporting framework.
I like that, telling us about a story and we're giving you the ingredients for a story. Great. Well, with that, words of encouragement and advice, I want to thank you so much for coming here and speaking to me and us. And again, do raise questions throughout today. And we look forward to further guidance documents. We look forward to further convergence. That's all what we can hope for. And with that, thank you. And I will allow a round of applause for Roberta for sharing her insights.